How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today I'm here with the creative team of Post Malone's Big Rig. How's it going, Adrian and Nathan?
Hey Omar, it's going great. Good to be back. I'm really excited to talk.
It's always a pleasure having you, brother. And Nathan, first time here on the channel, but I'm a huge fan of your work, brother.
Appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here for the first time. Hopefully, the first of many.
That's the attitude. So before we go any further, I promised Britta I would show this video right here. And this is pretty cool.
It's Posty, and I'm teaming up with the amazing folks at Vault Comics to bring you Big Rig. Big Rig is an insane story about three unlikely heroes battling wicked demons in medieval times using a massive 18-wheeler truck, and it's pretty fucking awesome. Be sure to grab a copy before they're gone. I love you very much.
So question number
Interview's
one.
over.
I think that was the pitch. I was going to ask Adrian what the pitch is, and I was like, I don't think anyone did it better than Post Malone. So let's talk about, before I show some of this artwork and talk about what the story is, give me a little behind the scenes. How did this happen? I know we've interviewed you as an editor at Vault Comics, and then, of course, as the writer, Dying Inside, and like helping out with that. But how is this different? How did this come about? I know that I heard through the grapevine that Post Malone really wanted to make a comic book, like really wanted to do it. So how did this happen?
So the really short version is that this idea was all Post's, and he came to us. We have worked with a bunch of kick-ass recording artists over the last couple of years. We did that great interview about Dying Inside with Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy, and through some mutual sort of friends and partners, we learned that Post had this idea for a comic, and it was kind of the like, we don't know if it's too wild and too weird, but he'd love to run it by you guys and see what you think. And he pitched us what we just saw, which is, Dark Ages, hell is invading, demons are overrunning Europe, and the secret sect of the Knights Templar pray for a holy weapon, and what crashes to Earth instead is a giant 18-wheeler, fully loaded tractor trailer rig, and our heroes use it to battle the demons. And I even if it wasn't Post Malone, I would have greenlit that project on the verbal pitch in any room. I was just instantly like, yes, this is so comic booky. This is my favorite thing I've ever heard. And then we just got to meet him and have a couple creative jam sessions, and it was off to the races.
When something like this is approached you, I'm always curious how this happens, right? Like how somebody like Post Malone approaches you, and then how much freedom you're given, or he's like, well, how about, this is pretty much the outline that I want to follow, and then you come in with ideas. How close do you work with somebody like Post Malone on this?
So Nate can talk a lot. I know, unfortunately, Nate's feeling a little under the weather, but Nate can talk a lot about like the rules that we had for the rig and like what Post really wanted to see us do there. Loads of freedom. We got to sit down with Post in person, and it was like, honestly, I don't know how else to describe this. It'll sound kind of corny, but it was like being like a 13-year-old kid again, just like excited and stoked about comic books. He had barbaric issues on the table.
Nice.
We talked about Blade, and that is like a touchstone, Evil Dead, Mad Max Fury Road, and a bunch of different manga like Chainsaw Man, and Gantz, and then, how do we land our Peter Parker moment? And that's when like Trucker puts on the cap and becomes Trucker, like that's sort of Peter Parker getting bit by the spider. We just had this jam session that was really fun, and Post had so many ideas, more than we could possibly fit into a single volume of comics. So honestly, the hardest part was like, how do we take all of these incredibly cool visuals and ideas that he has and fit it into the first arc of this comic? So we had we just sat there and bounced ideas back and forth and had a blast. And I came out of that first meeting just like completely revved up. And, you know, Post was like, "You're going to write this with me, right?" And I was like, "I guess," like, now that you ask, like, you know, I'm pretty excited. But as far as like what was strict, where we did have guardrails, where it was very much like, hey, I got some very clear ideas. It was about making sure that the rig stayed the weapon they use. And I'll let Nate talk about that because he's been bringing this rig to life.
Yeah, one of the things, you know, walking away from the meeting was like just how creative he was, and like how like he had thought about the story so much about, you know, the design of the rig it's fully loaded, but if you put too much in there, it's not really a fair fight. So it's more of like, we have the one stationary machine gun, but like I initially drew like a bunch of guns in there, like Punisher van or something like that. And he's like, well, no, because then it'll become about like the guns and the people, versus I want the truck to be the character. So it's very much like filled to the brim with very creative weaponry that they have to be really, really creative how they deploy that. So it isn't just like, you know, people running around with handguns blowing away zombies and demons, you know. So I thought that was a really cool point, that the rig itself is the main weapon, you know, that those 18 wheels of steel and like, you know, the stuff in the back has to be very specific to not overrun this cool kind of medieval army.
Yep. And it's been fun watching Nate like evolve the rig into this living creature. Cause like the rig we start with is just a sort of like it's like a Peterbilt that lands, right? Obviously there's some, it's not just truly that, because otherwise how would it survive the crash landing? But by the end, it's a completely different creature. It's evolved totally. And, you know, it also became really fun for me on the script side to like figure out really dynamic fight choreography on the rig, inside the rig, with the rig plowing through demons. Because again, Post's point, which was really smart, was like, if we just fill it with a bunch of like guns, then the characters are just going to run around and shoot all the demons, and it loses the point, which is that the rig is a central character. So there are weapons, surprise weapons, cool stuff all in the trailer, but these are also characters who have no idea what they are. They kind of have to figure it out. Like a little spoiler, like Edda keeps picking up this thing and she doesn't realize what it is, and everyone that's reading today is gonna be like, "It's a chainsaw. We want to see you use the chainsaw," but she doesn't even know what it is. She's just like, "Ooh, it's sharp. What is this?" And so yeah, that was a really fun rule that he kind of imposed, and it was a really smart rule.
I know I'm gonna keep saying this because every time I was looking at the artwork, it's just killer. I know I haven't had a chance to talk to Nathan, but I'm a big fan of your work, dude. I know you've done like things that like Barbaric, but this is just this is so cool. I remember when Brenda reached out to me about this, and I was like, "Okay, what's the pitch?" And she sold it just like Post Malone did, and I was like, "That's so badass! It's so stupid. I love it." That's comic books to me, right? Like immediately, my brain went, of course, with like much Evil Dead, of course, and Army of Darkness and Mad Max, but like the designs of the semi, I was like picturing in my head because I hadn't seen any of the artwork yet. I was like, okay, it could be like the Rhino from Mask, or it could be like Maximum Overdrive like type of trucks. But no, this is killer. When I read it, I was like, oh, this actually works, and it works like a weapon, like the way that you all wanted to see it. So it does come through in the pages.
Yeah, I think for me the rig is living character, just like the other ones are living characters. Like as Trucker's stubble grows throughout the issues, and through Edda's hair growing and changing, like very much the rig does change and go through, because it does get its butt kicked a few times, and you gotta rebuild. So it is very much like an ever changing character, with its own personality almost,
When this project was pitched, Adrian, you mentioned that Post Malone had bigger ideas, and you're like, okay, it's going to be more than just one comic. How long do you envision this, or how long have you all talked about this going? And
so the first book is 8 chapters. We're doing them in like overlength single issues. So every single issue, number 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'll get 2 chapters. But each chapter is a standard full 20 to 22 page book. So basically you can think of it as like 8 issues. So the first book we managed to figure out how to do the story in 8 issues, but that's only scratching the surface. I mean, we've got well planned into a second book. To be just completely candid about it, we've got like kind of 2 endings that we can end this first volume with. So basically, like, if it's selling and everyone's loving it and people are enjoying it and we're lucky enough to keep going, we've got a lot planned. If it comes out and it's doing pretty well and everybody likes it, but it's not like, people aren't like champing at the bit to see us go forever, we can wrap it up and I think put a really cool, satisfactory, very creatively satisfactory ending on this first volume. So it kind of comes down to how much, everyone loves it. And I hope we get to run it forever and ever, because we already have like a whole book 2 mapped out that I think would be really cool to get to, in part because I just want to see Nate draw some of the insane stuff that we have planned.
And you guys have worked together before. You and Nathan,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Nate and I co-founded Vault with Damien, my brother, Nate's cousin. Basically the only reason Vault exists is because way back when, once upon a time, we self-published some books that Nate drew every single page of, and they were gorgeous. And really all credit goes to him. We took him to a bunch of cons, met a bunch of other creators, and realized we had built the infrastructure to support all of these other incredible creators. And that's when we launched Vault. Basically took our self-publishing infrastructure and turned it into a full-blown publisher. But yeah, Nate and I have been making comic books together for ever and ever and ever. So it's really fun to come back around full circle and do this project after Vault was basically born out of our first collaborations.
Man, I love hearing that. You guys have been friends for a long time. So this is a really good question. The final art, is it going to be black and white? Because Rahul loves how it looks.
So I can answer it. So it was going to be colored, but then when I started toning and gray toning it, everyone was kind of like, "Don't add color, please." So there will be there will be 2 versions. It'll be black and white first, and then we will have a special colored version as like anniversary, or like as to go with the second chapter, something like that. So
seriously?
Down the road.
You guys
down the road
we'll do.
Yeah, exactly. Down the road, we'll do a full color. But right now, everyone saw Nate's black and white art, and we're just like, don't touch it. Like, maybe so there'll be little cool highlights. There's some red that's gonna be in there. You'll see some blood, but yeah, black and white.
Basically, yeah. When I sent it out, for like people, it's like, hey, what do you think? Everyone's like, please don't color this. Like, we love the black and white. So it's like, okay, I'll believe you all. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take your word of advice.
So we heard Post Malone's pitch. How would you pitch it, Adrian, to somebody that's like, wait, you got it's a comic book about a semi truck? What is this?
I mean, yeah, there is just the straightforward pitch of like, it's Europe in the Dark Ages, hell is invading, raid crash lands the earth, and our heroes use it to battle back demons from hell. That's like the really straightforward pitch. What I think I would add to it is the emotional anchor, which is like, Trucker is this broken character. He's a excommunicated priest who was once part of the Knights Templar, who fought in the Crusades. He's very haunted. He has a really, really tragic past. And it takes us a while to learn this, but the way we learn it is he gets stuck in a cab with 2 other people, Edda, who's a witch, Norse witch, who's ended up in Southern Europe, and Batu, who's Mongolian. She's the granddaughter of a general, and she's like a horse archer. And so they have different beliefs, even down to heaven and hell. Like they have different belief systems. They're from different places. They're very, very different characters. Ed is kind of like a punky Witch, and Batu's like a very sort of reserved but incredibly loyal warrior. And the three of them stuck on this kind of road trip is the emotional anchor, because they agree on almost nothing, but they have to work together. And that is, I think, what I would add is that after you get through the acceleration of the first issue, you start to figure out that the real heart of this story is the way these three people fit together like puzzle pieces, and they kind of each have something that the other one is lacking.
Okay, nice. And do we find out maybe how the rig got sent back here?
I'm not going to answer that one. Everyone's got to read. Nate always brings up a good point about leaving people with questions. Like, Nate, do you want to talk about that? About our approach of getting people to read and leaving them with questions?
I mean, I've always, yes, we have something, we have, but it's more of like, I always enjoy, this is a very fast-paced comic. Like, we want you to burn through this, and we want to leave you wanting more. So I think we introduce you to 100 questions. We answer 50 of them. Then you got 50 more to come back for book 2, and we'll introduce 50 more. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, we want you to just burn through these and keep going, which also lends itself to the black and white style of like, it's going to be able to turn out faster, and we want people to kind of burn through these, you know what I mean? And like, we want you to like wanting more. Like a good manga series for me, like I love like a good manga series is like, you don't know what you're reading until like Chainsaw Man is a good example. Like, you don't know what you're reading until like a few books in. You're like, oh, that's what that is. I got it now.
I love that book.
Yeah,
too.
and Nate and I talked a lot about that, about sort of fusing our favorite elements of American comics and manga. They're the same medium, but there are differences. And sometimes it's kind of hard to describe the differences, but everyone that reads both knows that there are some differences, and we can talk about them. And I think one of those is pacing and kind of story beats. And then the other is exactly what Nate said, which is there's just a lot of trust in manga. Like Gantz is another great book that Nate and I both love, and it's like has a lot of DNA, swirling around and Big Rig, where like you read and read and read, or Berserker, where it's like you read and read and read, and then slowly all the pieces start to fit together, and questions you've had since the very beginning are finally getting answered. And it's not like North American comics. American comics don't do that. We totally do. But there's a different kind of structure and pacing. And what we wanted to do was fuse our favorite kind of elements of both. Make sure we have our Peter Parker getting bitten by the spider moment in issue 1. That's a very American comic thing that we wanted to land. But then also, like Nate was saying, the kind of Chainsaw Man moment where you're like, whoa, I thought demons looked like people. What's this giant snail thing with 2 demons sticking out of its back? Like, are you going to explain that? And then we want to explain it down the road.
Okay, let's talk about some schedule then. Let's talk about the releases of these books, how often people should be able to see them at their store, when the release dates are, because we have the free comic book day. And then how much of the free comic book day is that first chapter that you were talking about? Because you said each issue is going to be like 2 different chapters and a total of 8. So is the free comic book day kind of like the first half of the first chapter?
Exactly. Yeah. The free comic book day is just chapter 1. And the actual issue number 1 will be chapter 1 and 2. So you'll get a whole additional 20 pages in the actual issue number 1. So it'll be twice the length of the free comic book day. And then in terms of release schedule, I'm actually just going to pull it up real quick. I know the first 2 off the top of my head, but I don't want to give anybody the wrong dates. So our first issue number 1 comes out on July 9th. That contains chapters 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Issue number 2 comes out on August 20th, and that contains chapters 3 and 4. And then issue number 3 comes out on September 24th. That contains 5 and 6. And then issue number 4, the last issue of the first arc, comes out on October 29th, and it contains 7 and 8. So you get 8, basically the equivalent of 8 single issues over 4 issues. Those 4 issues run July through October, and then October is when we debut the big badass hardcover, and we're very excited about
that. Boy, you came to the right place. You said debut. Talk to me about this hardcover, because let me tell you something right now, Adrian. I was looking at those covers. By the way, I gave my wife the pitch of this when she heard about the whole Post Malone Big Rig, and she was like, "Oh my God, we got to find the free comic book." David Britta had sent me the PDF, and I'm like, "You can read it now." I was looking at some of these covers, man. These are awesome. I love Nathan's artwork, but you've got that Daniel Warren Johnson cover. That's so badass.
Yeah, anybody who's a Daniel Warren Johnson fan knows he had to draw a cover. You go back to like the Ghost Fleet with him and Donny Cates.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Before he was like DWJ and we all like worship the ground he walks on. Even if you go back then and like he just had it, he could draw a rig like nobody's business. So of course he had to come do a cover, and then he gave us this awesome pull quote that made me so happy, where he was like, "I wish I had thought of this," and it's like probably my favorite pull quote ever, to get Daniel Warren Johnson saying like, "I wish I had thought of this."
Right?
He's been so awesome and supportive. So that's just one of many amazing covers we have, and that one will be available in the hardcover edition. The hardcover is going to be oversized, so it'll be bigger, the same way we did Wasted Space in that beautiful oversized edition.
Oh,
dude.
Same
thing with
yep. That edition is absolutely stunning. I love that edition, man.
So the same quality, same printer. We're going to be doing the oversized big rig. It's going to be on heavier paper stock. It's going to be just a truly gorgeous book, and we wanted, the book is called Big Rig. It had to be bigger. It had to be, more badass. So you'll have a couple different cover options for the hardcover, and one of those will be different variations of the Daniel Warren Johnson cover. So anybody who's a DWJ fan like me or Nate or you or Mark can get the DWJ cover.
There's also the Sean Gordon Murphy cover. That one's really cool because it kind of has the logo. Because I love how everybody has changed the logo up, like to kind of fit the tone of the freaking piece. So Sean Gordon Murphy's is like kind of looks like the Hot Wheels logo, but it's got like big rig. That one's awesome. I didn't know you guys had a Derek Robertson one too. That one's really cool.
Yep.
I figured most people would want to draw the rig, right? But Derek Robertson's like, "Nah, man, I'll draw the main character." That's awesome.
Yeah, he did like a really cool character focus of this really devastating moment in issue number 1. That I've had so many people who've read it be like, "What the F? Like, did this really just happen? Like, I thought he was gonna save this person, and then the rig just like," it's so funny seeing people be like angry and also like, "What?" But yeah, that Derek Robertson cover is amazing. The Sean Gordon Murphy cover is amazing. We've got some other ones that will surprise people with. I'm really stoked to have so many incredible artists come join and play in the sandbox. And I have to give a huge shout out. I know Nate would, if we were in the same room, would kick me under the table if I didn't do this, to Tim Daniel on our team, because all those variations on the logo design, that's all Tim. It's the same designer.
Yeah.
So he works with the artist on every single cover to adjust the logo design to fit the aesthetic of the cover. And so that's huge shout out to Tim. He did that. It's gorgeous, and he deserves all the credit there.
There's the JJ Villard cover. Kind of reminds me a little bit. I don't know what it's a take on, but to me it looked like the rat. What is his name? The Rat Fink.
Oh yeah. So JJ is awesome, and this one actually came straight from Post. Post was like, "I want this dude to draw a cover for." So I'll be completely honest. I didn't even really know of JJ's work until Post sent him over. He's a storyboard artist, and he's done work on like the Shrek movies. And so he has this like really funny, zany, wicked style. And yeah, JJ's cover is wild. It's so fun. Like all the
Yeah.
like demons hanging off the rig and getting it's a blast. So I'm excited for people to see that because it's our first time working with JJ. So it's the first cover from him we've ever done.
It looks it's got like this indie flair to it. It looks awesome. I don't have any other covers to share, but they're all on the website for the single issues here. Let me just there's actually a website just called bigrigcomic.com. It's pretty easy. Now, will each of the different issues have variant covers?
Yes. So every single issue that we're releasing will have a collector like box of surprise variants that are available to retailers to order. And then there will also be open order and like ratio incentive variants. So we're kind of taking three different like approaches. There's sort of like the lottery playing card pack style surprise box. Then there's just the open order, and then which you can get like the regular cover or the variants, and then there's some ratio where you have to like retailers have to order 10 or 25, and then they can grab those. So trying to make it like really fun for readers, collectors, and retailers, and give everybody who likes different approaches the opportunity to get the covers they want.
When you're thinking about covers and you're looking at the slipcase hardcover edition, like Wasted Space, how do you guys even decide? Like, is there a poll in the office that like, okay, this is the cover that's going to be the one? Or do you guys just go, well, no, obviously Nathan is the artist. He needs to do the cover. Like, how does that come about? Because that's got to be one of the hardest decisions to me as like somebody that gets to announce books for Marvel and other publishers. Like, whoever's picking the cover has to be like, it has to be a difficult job because you can't please everybody, right? Like, everybody has their favorite artist, everybody has their favorite scene, everybody has their own vision. But how do you guys go about that?
Nate, you want to handle this one? Or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I usually work directly with Tim, and just like Tim, like you film me with ideas. Let's see what we got. He's the master of covers and logo dress, title dress, everything. So like I usually start with him and be like, okay, where are we gonna go? Like you kind of point me in this right direction, wrong, you know what I mean? Like what we're gonna do. What is the feel we're going for first of all, and then second from there, it's like I usually try and think about like, okay, if I'm not going to draw it, who would I want to see draw it? You know, it's kind of like if I wasn't illustrating Big Rig, I would want to see Daniel Warren Johnson illustrate Big Rig. So then the immediate thing is, okay, can we get Daniel Warren Johnson? You know what I mean? Because like I would love to see his version of this. Derek Roberts, something, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of where I go of like, okay, if I'm not doing it, who would I want to most see do it other than me?
Now, I heard different. By the way, I'm also a huge fan of Gantz, so very cool that you guys are into it. What artistic inspiration did you draw from, Nathan? Like when you were thinking of this story, whether it's movies or manga or anime, like what was it that went through your head when creating this world?
It was a cool mashup of things, honestly, because this is such a mashed up world of like, starting with Mad Max Fury Road, those kind of things. You know what I mean? Because it's very much what the story is about, is like this thing going on a road trip. And so starting from there, and then like as far as like art, like people that know like who's following my career a little bit, like I change styles a little bit according to what book I'm working on. So like for me, it was very much like, okay, Daniel Warren Johnson, I'm going to read all of Murder Falcon and read all, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to read all of this stuff. And then from there was a lot of, we read Adrian and I read some mangas like I said, Gantz was a good place for me to start because that's like one of my childhood favorites. I hadn't read it in a long time. So I was like, let me pick this back up. Because that's what I wanted as far as pacing wise, like as far as like panel layouts, pacing wise, this is kind of what I wanted. And then, Mad Max was like how to kind of choreograph fight scenes. like how can this truck actually maneuver and do things in these pages that don't just seem ridiculous. You know what I mean? It was that, and then I'm trying to think. Honestly, playing Diablo again, the video game Diablo.
Yeah.
I've always loved that version of like the medieval times of like how bleak it was. So that was kind of like a little bit of video games, a little bit of movies, a little bit of comics, a little bit of manga.
And then I think what I would add to that list for me from a writing perspective is war stories. So like obvious touchstones are like Mad Max, Fury Road,
Mhm.
and then Evil Dead or Army of Darkness, and then tonally, we talked a lot about like Blade and having that kind of like badass but also a little humorous vibe where they're the classic one-liners that you're like, that's almost too silly, but somehow it works anyway. It's really fun. And then outside of that, I got really hooked on war stories and seeing this ultimately as a war story, because one thing we wanted to do was avoid treading the same ground of like I don't know, like an obvious book, like a Walking Dead, which is like a survivor story, and instead treat this more like a war story where they are going to war with hell. And so what ended up, popping into my sort of reading list and watching list was a lot of classic war films and war books, Band of Brothers, Pacific, Masters of the Air, that trio of TV shows. Because if you think about it, something like Masters of Air, right? Like the thing that's keeping them alive, their weapon, is also the thing that's dooming them. They're inside a plane, and like we had to create that same feeling with the rig. So like Fury, that war movie with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Fury, absolutely.
Yeah,
Fury
great
was
movie.
a big influence. Yeah.
And that was a huge influence because it's like we were like, oh well, the rig is basically their tank, right? So we ended up pulling a lot from stories about war and about kind of the like taking the fight to the enemy, as it were. And here, of course, like the enemy is very clear. It's a bunch of demons that are possessing people and turning them into these terrifying hordes so that hell can take over Earth.
When I was reading the pre-comic book day, this is the part that I was like, oh, that's so badass. When he puts the trucker hat on, that was like, I don't know why, but that freaking works, man. That's so cool.
Nate, do you want to talk real quick about that? Because we sweated bullets over this sequence.
Yeah, you got it, Adrian.
So we had done a version of this that was faster, and then a bunch of readers were like, gave us good feedback, and basically Nate and me and our editor Dershing and Tim, we all sat down and we like talked through and worked through like, okay, how do we slow this down and really land this moment? So Nate actually drew 2 whole new pages, and now that's everyone's favorite part. And I added those captions. Yeah, and I added the captions of "He hath become trucker" because like originally we sold it just with him putting the cap on, and then we were like, so actually this is another fun touchstone when we talked about like Thor and the old captions from like older Thor comics, and we were like,
yeah,
you know what? Just lean in, like go, like do the big caption, have fun, like let's make it "He hath become trucker, deliver a vengeance," and like really just put the pedal down. And I'm so glad we did, because now it's like everybody's favorite moment.
I know I'm talking about like this scene in particular when there's a bunch of guts and blood everywhere, but legit, it looks like you all are having fun, and I think it shows in the end product. And it, to me, that makes for a good comic, right? Like that is, I don't have to always read Grant Morrison or try to get a headache to try to figure things out when it comes to comics. Sometimes I really enjoy a comic for something like this. It's just goofy fun, but it's got some heart, and I like that about the world of comics, is there's just so much range out there. And this is definitely a book that I was really excited about. When this hardcover comes out, do you have a date? Like if you're already thinking of dates for the single issues, Adrian, do you all have a date perhaps when the hardcover will come out and how it will be done?
New York Comic Con. That's where we should have hardcover shipping by New York Comic Con, and the first physical editions will be at our booth at New York Comic Con. So that, I believe, is it October 12th this year? I will pull the dates right now. It's the 9th through the 12th of this year. That's our
huge.
Yeah, so that's when the first copies will be available, and then we'll also be shipping out copies to folks who have ordered. So right now we did like the initial launch of the hardcover and that opening kind of teaser window.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're doing a bunch of the single issues and making sure the direct market can sell to all the readers coming into their shops. And then there will be the hardcover backup eventually for order. And New York Comic Con will be the first place people can see it in person, pick it up and check it out. And obviously, Omar, we will be sending you a copy. Don't worry.
I'm so excited to see this in an oversized format and to see it, in a hardcover. Then the other question is, are you all going to go the route of something like Dying Inside with the multiple different versions of it, right? Like the different covers, the different dust jacket designs, the different artists on it.
Yes, simple answer is there will be a couple different hardcovers available. When we go to the mass market, we're distributed through Simon & Schuster. So when it's like available at your Barnes & Noble or on Amazon or at Books A Million or at your local bookstore as well, that will be next year in spring. And it'll be a soft cover, and it'll be standard comic book size. So the only way to get like the oversized, really beautiful presentation will be the hardcover, and then the trade paperback will come out at a normal size, just like the kind of all 8 issues kind of stuck together. And so that's that, but that won't be out until spring of next year.
So this is an excellent question. Ibsy, they answered a little bit earlier if it's going to stay black and white. It is. But will it be a colored later? But you mentioned Nathan actually did that there was a color version and there will be a color version later. But how about for the collected edition too? Like, is it going to be black and white first? Is it going to or is it going to have both? Like,
it's going to stay. Yeah, the hardcover will be black and white. The first trade paperback will be black and white. All the single issues will be black and white with red. We are doing spot colors of red, which will be really cool.
I noticed some of the word bubbles, especially on the
and there's more coming. We have the final version will look even cooler than the free comic book day. So there's some differences in the art, which I think people are going to love. Then after all of that, we'll do, like Nate was saying, like an anniversary edition, like a re-release of the full color where everybody gets to see everything fully colored and fully realized. Bunch of reasons for that, but honestly, one of them, like Nate said, is just like once we started doing it in black and white, people fell in love with it. We fell in love with it. It kind of became the vision for the book, and we want that to come out, get all of its different presentations, everybody to love that, and then later we'll do the colorized version, and of course we'll do a couple different kinds of releases for the color version as well.
Nathan, I wanted to talk about these designs really quick, and where the inspiration came from. Is this something that Post Malone was like, kind of have the idea for the rig, but also what the driver's going to look like and some of the supporting cast, or is this all coming from you?
He pretty much had the rig and the trucker out like design. I'm the one that was like, we have to give him face tattoos because that's what Posty is known for. So I'm like, we have to give him face tattoos. And then Adrian and I sat on the side and like came up with a really cool plot point that why he has the tattoos and brands and things like that. So without spoiling too much, there are a reason for the tattoos and everything and on his body. But no, the designs kind of came from Adrian and I. We kind of designed Edda and Batu together. As far as like trying to get 3 people that cannot get along by any means, and they're forced to, you know what I mean? Like it's guy that doesn't really want to talk forced to sit next to a teenage witch who can't stop talking in a long road trip. You know what I mean? It's like you can't. It's just like there's so much humor that comes from it. There's so much. So like that was where I started with Edda. Was okay. I'm making the exact opposite of Trucker. It's going to be this little wild, rich girl that like eats her eats her toenails, like eats with her hands, and like could give a crap about like cleanliness. And then you have Batu, who is this very well put together, like if she could iron her shirt before she puts it on, she would. You know what I mean? Like there's like these three distinct people that just like they do not get along, and they have to.
And then I also have to give Nate huge credit because I'm like on the writing side, I'm a massive history nerd, and I populated the book with like all sorts of weirdly historically accurate pieces to make up for the fact that like the roads wouldn't be necessarily wide enough for a rig to drive down. So like we're obviously playing fast and loose with history. But like we were like, oh, we'll compensate for it by populating it with all sorts of like really cool little pieces of real world history. Nate did the same thing with the character design. So like Batu is a great example. Like the bow she uses is actually a like a historically accurate representation of a Mongolian like horse archer bow. So it's like, and there's like all sorts of stuff like that Nate's gone in there and we've researched and drawn. Like they play a game at one point, which is kind of similar to like Jack's. It's like a picking up like sheep knuckle bones off the ground and catching a chain in one hand. And it's a very historically accurate game that kids would have played. And Nate drew like the knuckle bones, exactly how they would have put them on the ground to play this game. And so that I got to give Nate huge credit for going in and designing these characters in a way that also represents like I said, historically accurate, and just the enormous amount of research he's done.
I know we got to start wrapping up, but I always wonder this question. When you have somebody like Nate that is, he's been drawing, you guys have been working together for years, right? Even before Vault Comics. How do you write the script where something like, I was looking at this page right here where like this guy gets decapitated, or for example, like where this double page spread. Like Adrian, when you're writing a script, are you writing to Nate like, all right, man, Trucker's gonna run over a bunch of zombies, just have fun with it? Or are you detailed with your script? Like, okay, look, we got to have at least like 3 bodies in the front, like a dude that's kind of ripped aside by the tire on the left-hand side. Like, I got to ask that because I'm always curious how people like you two that seem really, really close work together.
I feel like Nate, you should answer this one. You're the one.
I mean, basically, he just goes, "Hey, this is what needs to happen on this page. Make it happen." He's like, "Here's your here's your 3 story elements that have to happen on this page. You go get it done."
Okay.
Yeah,
especially with something like that, where there's no dialogue.
Yep.
Like, right. If there's dialogue, obviously we have to be in sync. You know what I mean? But something like that, it's like he'll often just say, "Nathan, do you?"
Yes, I can literally read you the script, pages 14 and 15.
Sure, what you got?
6 panels. It says, all right, Nate, you're up. However you want to design this page, it's yours, but I'm going to give you some ideas, which I've mapped as panels. Take them, leave them, swap them. Time to effing rip. DPS, the splash is the rig, hammer down, hauling ass. Maybe we see Trucker through their windshield, maybe we don't. The plow is splattered with blood and limbs, and then it just goes from there. But there are other pages where like I'm very tightly choreographing and paneling and blocking and being like, here's how I see the shot, here's the character, this is the key moment, this is what we need, this is what they're saying, and we want to land this emotional beat. But like the page that you pointed to, that double page spread, like that is exactly where Nate and I have worked together for so long. I know whatever I pretend I can cook up in my brain visually, it's not going to be as cool as what Nate can cook up visually. So I got to step out of the way and let him do his thing, and let him take over. And the other thing I tried to be really aware of scripting with Nate is I don't know if there's stay on this page. Actually, this is a perfect example.
This one here?
Yeah. I don't know if there's a better artist in the game at inset panels. And so what I always try to do is primary action in the main panel, and then inset panels sell like secondary but important action. And so Nate right here did this highlight panel of the cross, the rosary on this character's hand that's buried. I won't spoil who it is, but obviously somebody didn't make it out of the rubble, and we see this rosary. And that's another thing I try to pay attention to in the script, is like give one action per panel to Nate, but use these insets as like highlights and important secondary actions and details. And Nate, like, I don't know how you do it, because some of these pages that I map out, I'm like, oh my God, I'm asking Nate so much. And then he nails it every time. And like in a tiny little panel like that, he sells it, and it makes your eye go right there. And you're like, uh-oh. And then, you know, that rosary will come back later in the story. So it's stuff like that I think maybe you do have to work with someone for a while to learn what they do best. And Nate is just the best at those kind of inset panels.
I love that. I love the trust in each other, right? It's like you got to play to your artist. And I think there are so many comic book creators throughout time that feel comfortable enough with their artists whenever they get, you know, I think of like the Chris Claremont, John Byrne kind of thing, or the Chris Claremont, Jim Lee eventually too. But it's like they learn to trust their artists, and the artists have like all this freedom. And not everybody's like Alan Moore when it comes to script writing. Like, I want this panel to look exactly like this, and gives you a page to describe the panel. I think in this medium, you have to trust your artist to also, you know, make your story propel. I have this other question. When doing this, I assume you two, once it's done, like the first chapter, do you send it over to Post Malone for him to be like, yeah, this is awesome?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
Or is it page by page? Like, how is it that you guys work together?
For me, for
Scripts
artwork, it was chunks. It was chunks of pages. Like, it was usually like 4 to 5 to 6 pages. It was like, here, what do you think of this? Because I usually like to do a scene and then send the scene off. Because like, it's hard to take a page in by itself when you have no context. So when you have like a whole scene, I could just send it over scene by scene of like, here's the church scene, then here's the drive scene, then here, you know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
you
okay.
can kind of read it in pieces.
Did he like this part too? Did he like?
Yes,
did he leave a note about
this?
Yes,
he loves that part. But actually, a great scene to talk about there is that the scene after the rig makes impact, and we see Trucker climbing out of the rubble. Like, we sent over early version, and you know, Post was like, we have to see the cross cracked in the foreground.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember he was like, you got to like cross under the crow.
He's like, that has to be, we have to see the cross broken here. And so like, there are little notes like that come from Post. Like, that's how granular he gets looking at stuff. And I send the scripts over way before Nate starts drawing to make sure that they love them, and we get all of Post's notes and thoughts and feedback into the scripts and rework and rewrite. That way Nate isn't drawing stuff and then having to go back and redraw. So yeah, everything goes through and by Posty way before, hopefully way before Nate even puts ink on paper.
So I've got one more question. Just one more. When talking to Post Malone, do you refer to him as Posty, or do you call him Mr. Malone? Like, how does that work?
I don't think you would let me call him Mr. Malone. Yeah, I just call him Post or Posty. Yeah. Yeah. If I said Mr. Malone, I think he'd be like, "That's my dad." Like, what are you doing? What are you saying?
I kind of figured that. Like, he seems pretty chill. Even in his little introduction video, I thought he was pretty chill. So the book goes on sale. The first issue goes on sale in July. Actually, Adrian has the exact dates. You have one coming out in July, one coming out in August, September, and wrapping up in October. And the premiere of the hardcover, the deluxe hardcover, will be at New York Comic Con. And that will be the collection of the first 4 issues, which will have the 8 chapters available there. I'm sure people will ask me later, so I'm going to go ahead and ask now. Will there be a signed edition of said hardcovers like you all did with Dying Inside and Wasted Space? Like, Post Malone signed editions is probably what people are going to be asking me about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the signature everybody wants for sure. I can't say for certain if those will be available online. There will be signed editions at some point, but I'm not certain if we're going to be able to do those through our web store or if it's just going to be in person, because we do, without spoiling any announcements, have some surprises of Post Malone appearances when we'll have the book. So there will be opportunities for signatures at some point. I can't promise that they'll be through the web store though. That's a question for other folks, not me.
If he's having so much fun doing this, I can't imagine him not wanting to see the reaction of people, you know. And then actually I do have one last question. I saw pictures and I'm not sure, but there was a Post Malone picture with like a big rig. Like, is that does that tie into this? What is that about?
Yeah, I mean that's the rig. We have a real big rig with all the weaponry and the plow and the demon head and all that on tour with Post right now at the Traveling Tailgate. So every stop on the big ass stadium tour that Post is doing that has a tailgate, specifically the Traveling Tailgate, the rig appears and you can go take pictures with it, and they're handing out tour editions, which is the free comic book day edition, but with a different cover.
Oh, nice.
And they're handing those out to loads of people to get straight into fans' hands. And if we're really, really lucky, we were going to get to park that real life, actual 18-wheeler on a show floor at a Comic-Con. I can't say any more than that. But we're really hoping that we get all the logistics sorted out, because we have
a lot of lawyers involved. lots of lawyers involved.
Lots of lawyers involved.
We have the thing built and it's real and it's a giant rig, and we're hoping we can get it parked on the show floor.
Driving a rig covered in weapons into a show floor, you would think it's easy enough, but no, it's a lot of safety issues.
That's a different CDL license that you need for all of that.
About this, so. Yeah.
Post has to title its song "Big Rig" by the next album. I like that.
I sure hope so.
Gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you all again. Nathan, you are always welcome back, man, especially if you feel better, on the channel to talk about future projects. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk again at New York Comic Con. Now that you told me that the hardcover is going to be available there, I may have to actually sneak up there again this year. But big thank you to also Britta and David for putting all of this together and setting time aside. Everybody, thank you all. And Vault Comics, of course. July, you said it was the July 20, what was the date?
July 9th. July 9th is the first issue.
Oh,
July 9th.
So about a month away. The first issue will be out. So
yeah, FOC is Monday. Final order cutoff for issue number 1 is Monday. It's of this, this upcoming Monday, June 9th, and then a month later, July 9th, it comes out.
So go and talk to your local comic book store or wherever you order books online, or you can go to the website that I left in the link in the description of the video. But gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you all for watching that live. And then if you're watching this later, hit that like button, everybody. And check out the book. Thank you. Absolutely. Stay healthy and safe, everyone. Have a wonderful day.